Today's episode is brought to you by Oxenham Group. Disengaged employees cost U.S. companies up to $550 billion per year, and a recent Gallup poll showed that only 33% of the U.S. workforce considers itself engaged. How are you ensuring that the people you hire are engaged? The Oxenham Group is a recruiting company that focuses on why a person takes a job and what makes them stay. They do this by understanding one's motivation, skills, and personal mission. Oxenham's proprietary process focuses on three main areas: sociologist-prepared questions, IBM Prove-It assessments, and Gallup Clifton Strengths. The combined results give the interviewer valuable insight into the potential for close alignment and the likelihood of engagement. Reach out today to learn more about how you can identify highly engaged people and harness the power of alignment with Oxenham Group. For more information, please call 605-610-3026 or visit their website at oxenhamgroup.com.
Hey everyone, welcome to Canopy Cast. This is John Michael Price. With me are Christopher McGurn and Michael O'Connor. Today we have a guest, Jordan Mendoza, Training Development Manager at Gables Residential, also host of Blaze Your Own Trail podcast. Welcome to the show, Jordan.
Hey, thank you so much for taking the time, guys. I appreciate any opportunity to share what I do, so appreciate it.
Yeah. So, just to get started, you have a lot going on with a corporate job, podcast host, and I think you said as well, private consulting. Why don't you just give us a little backstory on what you do, what you're passionate about, and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I would love to give you guys some context. So whenever I'm on a podcast, I think the first place I always like to start is kind of origin story, right? So, where did I grow up? Who are the people around me that have been influential in my life, and because really I think it's your surrounding cast that really helps you along, right? We kind of fumble our way through things, and there's people that are there to support us. So I actually grew up in the Pacific Northwest, Portland, Oregon. So I'm a massive Portland sports fan. Trailblazers is our team, right? It's our only professional team. So always been a big fan of them. And so I grew up with my mom and my stepdad, who he was an alcoholic. So that was, makes it tough when you're a kid, when you see the things that can happen when people are alcoholics. And my mom has a pretty unique story. She actually was born with one lung. And so this was back in 1958. And back in those days, if you were born with one lung, there was basically a couple things the doctors told you. They said, for one, you probably won't live to be 18 years old, right? They didn't think that the technology or the human body could, take the effects of living off of one lung. And they also told her that she probably wouldn't have any children. And so she was one of those people that was a fighter, right? She actually lived to 54 years old, and she ended up having 5 boys. So like, she is somebody that, I look at from an adversity perspective, because I think as humans, we all go through adversity, but she handled it with such grace and class and positivity, and didn't use it as a crutch, even though she couldn't work. She was like the side hustle queen before they existed. She would do bingo or go to the dog races, right? Like, she had her little hustles on of ways to provide for her family and to make money, So, we're growing up in North Portland with, you got 4 kids. We have one brother that's actually a little older. I'm 20 years older than him. So, right. It was another miracle, one of the 5 miracle babies. Right. But, she always just pushed through and remained positive, and taught me about kindness and empathy. So that's kind of 50% of where I've gotten that side of me. And then, I had an opportunity to meet my dad when I was 12. And this was a very interesting experience, because I grew up with my brothers, and we didn't have a lot, poverty, food stamps, you want to talk about, trying to get to your next meal type of stuff. Right. And then I get an opportunity at 12 to fly out to Washington, D.C. to meet my dad for the first time. And, of course, all the thoughts on the flights out there is like, where the heck's this guy been? Right. And so, of course, it's a tough situation to go into, but he was, I would say, well off. He was probably upper middle class, but he had his own business, and he'd been operating that business for a while. And so, he started to teach me things that first summer about, working hard, making sure that no matter what you do, you work hard, even when no one's there to watch you. Because if you can do that when no one's watching, then when people are watching, you can even perform at a higher level, right? So I started to learn that hard work from him. And at 16, I got the opportunity to go meet some of my family, my grandparents in the Philippines. And you want to talk about culture shift and perspective shift, try going to a third world country for 3 months and experiencing living, in the mountains with pumping your own water, and how people are just so happy with little. They didn't have much, but they had so much love and happiness. So I've had these different moments and pockets and things in life and people that it helped me evolve into who I am, right? I've seen good examples, I've seen bad examples, but I would say that mom and dad are kind of the two most positive influencers in my life, and they've really helped me along the journey.
That's awesome. That's an incredible backstory. Props to your mom for fighting it out and just having the life that she did and being able to impact you. And I'm assuming your other four brothers as well in an amazing way. That's just incredible. And we've been having that kind of theme of empathy continually show up on our podcast with our guests, and it's just awesome to be able to experience that in so many different ways and fashions through other people. And I think that's a huge testament to where our society is and is heading, with the kind of theme of empathy, of just being there for one another, especially in times right now with COVID and how society is being affected.
I agree with that. Absolutely.
Yeah,
It's definitely, if it wasn't a focus before, it should be now, right? That's how I look
right.
at most businesses. I'm like, hey, listen, don't be worried about future business. What about the people that are here now? What about your
Mhm.
employees today? What about your clients today? They're paying very close attention in how you're treating them and how you're responding and the things that you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. And Mike and I are actually having a conversation probably about a week ago about the different companies and responses to tough times. He can word it a lot better than I can, but I'd love to hear your opinion, especially from a training development manager's perspective. Mike, you're talking about the differences in businesses and their response to employees, whether they fire or keep them on during really difficult times, and the level of transparency and how that affects their business in the future. I'd love if you could kind of bring that up again. I could try, but you'd word it a lot better than I do.
Sure. Yeah, it's just, I think, man, there was no prep for this. I just happened to remember things.
Sorry.
I think I
You're
was
the
talking
economics
about,
major. You brought this on yourself.
I think I was talking about, there's many case studies out there of companies that were on the brink of failure, or there was severe economic downturns, whether it's the Great Depression, 2008, whatever. And, some companies most companies will have layoffs, or, some sort of attempt to cut costs and kind of get everything back on track, and, just focus on kind of their profit formula. And there are these stories, amazing stories of companies that they'll be completely honest with their employees and say, hey, look, like we literally can't pay you guys right now. We don't have, the kind of resources right now. We don't want to fire you though. Like, you guys are family. If you guys want, we can all band together and just work hard and try and do well for our customers, and take the hit together and see if we can keep going and see what happens. And many companies kind of get through this where employees are willing to just work and to kind of give of themselves, and at the management at the same level, everyone is having that empathy with each other to get through this. And some companies come out of that stronger than ever. This will be a re-uptick in business, and they'll be incredible players, and they've had an unbelievable camaraderie in their workforce. And I think it's been amazing to see recently, with the coronavirus, how there's been a lot of companies that handle things poorly, and I think there's a lot of companies that are handling things well. And it's been amazing to see that kind of contrast so vividly recently.
Absolutely. No, I agree with that. I mean, we're seeing a clear case of fight or flight, right? You've got people that when everything happened, they're like, oh man, this is phenomenal. There's a lot of opportunities. And then you had people say, oh no, this is happening. I'm going to go into hiding, So it's all about what are you going to do? Right. Because if you think about it, we're not going back to how it was 7 weeks ago. Right. Like, there's a lot of companies out there, a lot of big corporations that are going to say, man, like, Bill did really good at home, working from home. Like, do we really need to have to spend this money on this office space, right? Do we really need 100,000 square feet of office? Maybe we'll like get it down to 20, right? And give people, right? Because a lot of organizations looked at before COVID and they said, there's no way people can work from home. Like 1 day a week is like max, right? All of a sudden, everybody's at home, and they're seeing the productivity, they're seeing the sales results, they're seeing the way that social is impacting business. I mean, it's been very, very interesting to see for sure.
Yeah, and I think with life in general, I mean, like obviously with the business, but really just across the board with life, it's a time for radical movement, whether on the business front, whether it's with your family, whether it's whatever that may be. It's a time of black and white. There's no more gray. I was in a Wendy's parking lot talking to Michael here, and we were just talking about like our business. We were talking about just life in general, and it's that came up. It was just like, wow, like it's a time to live radically more than ever. Just like life as we know it is going to be different moving forward, and we have to accept that and figure out how we're going to approach that.
100%.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Like you said, we're not going back to the same that we were 7 weeks ago. And it's been really interesting for us because our main business, Chameleon, is built on a remote first communication model. And it was really interesting for us to see these other businesses, clients that we had, people that we were talking to, describing how there's so much of a struggle to transition to remote work. And we were just sitting here like, okay, we're doing the same thing that we've been doing, and there's no change for us, at least in that one specific business. But it was really interesting to kind of get the confirmation that like we're being innovative, but other people are being forced to be innovative now. And forceful innovation isn't always necessarily taken well, especially by big corporate companies that have to make those transitions. Because I know a lot of businesses, like you said, have said, okay, you have to have 1 day a week at home, and that's it. And they weren't really willing to experiment with more than that because they didn't know how it was going to go. And when you're at that big of a scale, you have absolutely no idea what's going to happen. And I think there are going to be so many studies, taken from this because all of these companies had to. They didn't have a choice, and it's just fascinating. But yeah, how have you seen that specifically affect your current job and performance of people? You're a training and development manager. How have you seen that affect that specific aspect of the job? Where I don't know if you've brought anybody on from a remote environment, onboarding, anything like that, or current people that you've had. How have you seen that kind of affect the current workflow where you are?
Yeah. So it was interesting. And, fortunately for our team, we started about 6 months ago to start offering virtual live instructor led training. Right. So that's really set the foundation. And literally, I want to say like 2 or 3 weeks prior to COVID, our entire company switched to Zoom phone and Zoom for our video conferencing. I mean, it was like somebody knew this is coming, right? Because literally everybody just got over. So there was already a little bit of familiarity, but it's a different thing in having it and using it, right?
Sure.
Like they're like, oh, everybody's freaking out. What are we going to do? How are we going to train our people? And my boss literally calls me on a Monday night, and he's like, by tomorrow, I need you to create some content so we can teach our on-site salespeople how to shoot video, how to create a YouTube account and upload these videos. So they can take the links to the videos and use it for their prospects so they can now tour them virtually. And I said, listen, this would be a good Band-Aid, but what I want to build out is a course that teaches them how to sell using the new technology that we've spent all this money on. So I went to work and I built a training course. It's called Maximizing Sales in a Virtual Environment. And now I'm teaching that. I've already put 400 of our associates through it over the last handful of weeks. And it literally is teaching them. And again, it's so interesting because most people, when they're like, oh crap, like I've got to be on camera, right? You freak out because it's a form of public speaking. But what I've been telling them is like, listen, you were already doing this. You were already leasing to people in California. They couldn't see the place, but you send them a link. Well, now this actually gets the sales process face to face. You can talk with these prospects. You can show them your personality. You can share with them the videos, the 3D tours, but you can do that with them. And so now when you close them, you just drop that link to rent that apartment in the chat in Zoom. They can literally go right to that link, right? So I wanted to create a way that we can train people at scale and have it be sustainable, because like people can't come to tour our buildings anymore. They can't, because of all the restrictions. So this was the next best thing to make sure that they can actually maximize their sales efforts.
Yeah. And that's fascinating to hear the innovative process that you went through there. It's interesting that your company was already transitioning to kind of these kind of more newer emergent kind of tools and strategies. And then you were able to just innovate on the spot. Like, okay, we have this problem, we're going to do this and this. And to achieve that it seems like, it was very quick as well.
You just said two of my strengths. I'm an activator and achiever. If you look at the Gallup, your top 5, activator and achiever are 2 of my top 5. So that's the reason why, right? Like, that's just how I am. Communication is another one, right? So you use these strengths that you have, and I'm a big believer in strengths. I teach a 6-month leadership program every year, my favorite part of the year, because it starts with the foundational introspective look at yourself. We actually have everyone take the Myers-Briggs type indicator assessment. I'm certified in Myers-Briggs. So we have them take that. They get a deep dive into themselves. And then we go into topics like strengths-based leadership, right? Once you can know your strengths, you don't focus on the weaknesses anymore. You focus on what? Building those strengths. Because when people focus on their weakness, their strengths start to go down and start to diminish, right? You ever seen a player that was sitting on the couch for 6 weeks and then he gets picked up by an NFL team? What's he look like when he gets out there? He looks crappy. Why? Because he didn't use his strengths, right? And so, it's crazy that you literally said 2 of those strengths that I had, and so that's why I'm enabled to just kind of quickly move. Like, he's like, "Hey, do this." I'm like, "Well, we can do this, but this is how I want it to look, and let me build it." That's just the way that I am.
And it's not surprising at all that he went to you. Like, it makes sense just from listening. Like, it makes sense why he went to you in the time that he did, and he knew he could count on you. And that's fantastic to hear. That's really impressive, and props to you for that.
Appreciate it.
What was it that first got you to kind of realize your strengths? Like, was there a defining moment where you kind of realized it, or was it a test, or was it kind of a process?
Yeah, so I first took the strengths assessment. I think it was 2014. We were down in Orlando. It was like our training team. We have these meetings that we do where there's a bunch of team building, and our entire team took this assessment. And I don't know if you've all taken it. I think now it's called Clifton Strengths, but you take this assessment. It's about 30 minutes. It populates your top 5 out of 34 possibilities. And when that gets laid out to you, right? When it gets put in black and white, and you can see it, and you're like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. That, like, okay, I could see myself in that. I can see myself in that. And then you take a deeper dive into what those strengths actually mean and how you can use them to your benefit. I mean, the world is wide open, right? Because if you continuously invest in yourself, and for my role, that's actually harder because I'm usually investing in other people, so I have to actually make that switch and say, you know what? It's time for me to eat. It's time for me to consume content. It's time for me to learn something, because you've got to, when you're coaching people, like I coach people for 6 months, I train them. When you're doing that, you have to be on all the time. There's not an opportunity. Now, can people be off? Absolutely. But I know for me, I want the people in the cohort to get the best experiences possible. So you got to be on your game,
Yeah. Interestingly enough, this actually definitely reminds me of the sponsor for this episode, Oxenham Group, because they're a recruiting agency that focuses specifically on Gallup Clifton Strengths and all of that, like, and how they find the alignment and whatnot for the recruiting. So it's really interesting to talk about this. It's like, well, I'm sure they'll appreciate that.
Yeah,
so.
I wasn't even planned.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, kind of going from that, discussing strengths and, finding what you're good at. What do you look for in people? Either when you're in a position of hiring someone, or in training, what are some of the key things you're looking for someone in sales? Specifically for yourself, for your industry, but just kind of like overall as well, because I'm sure there are people listening in who are interested in sales, wondering, like, do I have what it takes? What is it that what's that kind of X factor that you look for?
Yeah, so our organization, we do have a pre-hire assessment. It's done through People Answers, and really that assessment is tailored to really see if somebody's a good culture fit, right? Because I think that's the most important thing, right? You've got to hire people that fit your culture, because that way you're at least weeding some folks out, right, in the beginning that really shouldn't get to that interview process. We have a culture fit assessment. After that, we put them through a bunch of different training. So we have, virtual training. But I think that the key for anyone in sales, if anyone's listening and they're thinking about doing sales, it's all a mindset game, right? I don't care, business, life, everything's a mindset game. I heard a guy, and I don't know who he got the quote from, but I was just in Orlando in February, right before COVID hit. And our instructor for the day, he said, the inner game controls the outer game, right? I mean, and this rings so true. If and everybody sells, I don't care what company you're in, like there are sales that happen in your organization, right? Everybody does it. So if you have a crappy attitude, guess what? People are going to recognize that. It's contagious. Just like when you have a good attitude, that's also contagious. So I think the number one thing I'm looking at is, like, how are you at handling objections? Because, if you get an objection and every time it starts to lower your attitude, then we've got to fix your mindset. We've got to focus on that area, right? And so what I tell people is, listen, your attitude, and you guys may have seen this old, flip chart thing, but attitude equals 100%. If you take the alphabet, there's, we've got, A through Z, and you give a numerical category to each of the letters, right? A is 1, B is 2, and so on and so forth. If you actually take the word attitude and write it out and calculate it, it equals 100%. Okay. Hard work equals 98%. Knowledge equals 96. But hard work, right? Because you can have hard work and knowledge, but if you have a crappy attitude, you're not going to get to where you want to go.
I love that. That's
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I never would have thought about that, but that's a great analogy, and that's totally true too. I mean, that's something that we really like to focus on as well, is that culture, because it not only do they fit your culture, but how's the person going to affect the culture? Because every time you add an employee, it's another piece of the puzzle, and whether people want to admit it or not, every time you add an employee, they change the culture, whether it's minutely or drastically. And if it's a really bad attitude like you're talking about and they don't fit, it's going to change the culture for the whole company. And obviously, the more people you have in your company, the less it's going to affect it. But I think that's especially something that people in startup phase need to be really careful of, because you don't have that many people, and one person can mean the downfall of the entire business. It's incredibly interesting.
Yeah, I find that fascinating. You mentioned the internal game and the external game. I think that is so important to to find, like you're saying, John Michael, to find the people who are playing their internal game, well, who are doing a good job, who have self-esteem and are confident in who they are. And I guess, how did you, going back to you, Jordan, how did you kind of start into the industry of helping people understand who they are? Like, how did you get into the whole training mindset? Because like you said, you're constantly pouring yourself out into other people, helping them to do better. What brought you into that?
I think a lot of it started. So my very first job, right? This is at 14 years old, 1995, was going door to door and signing people up for newspaper subscriptions, right? So literally, like, here I am at 14 years old. I've got an apartment complex or a neighborhood, and I've literally got to go and knock on 100 doors a day. Well, day one sucked, right? Like everybody told me no on day one. And it impacted me so much that I almost didn't want to go back on day two, right? But I had, talked to the guy. We were settling up all of our stuff at the end, and he said something to me, and I've never forgotten it ever since. But he said, you're probably not going to understand this, Jordan, today, but one day, hopefully, you'll get this. And I said, okay, whatever. Just tell me want to go home, And he said, the sale doesn't start until the customer says no. And I said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I'll go home now. Right. And I was like, literally it took me probably a year or two or three to really figure this out. And so I had numerous sales jobs after that. I was like a sales leader and a trainer. And I remember I had a salesperson that had their first day, and they had the same goofy look on their face when they came back that I did. And you could tell they were frustrated. And this is the first time it really clicked with me. I told them, I said, the sale doesn't start until the customer says no. And so, to give you context, what does that mean? Right. But that's been ingrained in us as humans since we were kids. You remember being a kid and you reach up towards the oven to grab something. And they're like, no, don't touch it. It's hot. Or when you asked to go outside and they're like, no, it's bedtime. And you tried to stay up a little later and they said no. Like, we are literally naturally wired from kids as humans to say no. Like, that's just the natural instinct. And so I had to really get good. And this is where it all started, right? The question that you asked, this is where it started, because no means the beginning of the conversation, not the end. And so I had to get real creative. I had to, because here's the thing, when you're walking up someone's driveway, you've got about 20 feet from driveway to door in most cases. So I had to get really good at looking at everything around me. I would look at their flags that they had outside. I would look at their car. I would try to find some place and point where I could break the ice before they could get a dang word out. Right? Because I already know what their initial response is going to be when I knock on that door. I've heard, like, get out of my lawn. I've heard, you woke up my baby. I mean, at 14 years old, I heard every dang no that you could possibly get. Right? But what it helped me do is it helped me learn how to read people, how to relate to people, how to relax, and really start to get things out of people. And so I would actually come up with what I was going to say right when they opened the door. I'd be like, they'd open the door, I'd say, hey, awesome flag. Are you a whatever fan? Like, and their like ice just started to melt, right? Because I'm hitting something before they even have an opportunity. But that got me really good at having conversations. And when you have conversations, it's actually more about being a better listener, right? You have 2 ears and one mouth. You got to use them in that ratio, especially when it comes to sales. There's the art of pause. The first one that talks loses, all these different techniques. So I started to learn these things. And so that really helped me as a coach identify things in other people, because I became a good listener. Because in sales, you actually want to listen twice as much as you speak, and not the other way around, because that's how you'll get yourself caught,
Yeah.
That's an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
That's crazy. I think that's really, really good advice for people just getting into sales too, especially right now, because I know it has to be incredibly discouraging to start a sales career in the middle of COVID. I can't even imagine it, because you have, this opportunity for a job. And, I was talking to someone recently and they said it's what's interesting about sales is it's one of the only jobs where your performance directly reflects your compensation. And it's very true, and also kind of very unfortunate for right now, because no one's wanting to really do business. And of course there are those industries that are excelling: healthcare, supply chain, everything, and logistics of what people are in excess of using right now. But for the most part, especially B2B sales, it's tanked. And a lot of it is that mindset and of understanding, like, you just have to build relationships and you just have to keep working at it, and it's going to pay off. So that's an awesome story there. I love that.
Yeah, I think we're gonna need to have all of our salespeople that work for us kind of take a listen to this episode and be like, hey, check this part out.
100%.
Really awesome advice. Yeah. So
I wrote an
think,
article actually on LinkedIn. You can check it out on my profile. Have them read that article, because it's like all the things I learned at 14 years old doing door-to-door sales. I wrote an article, and it's there. It's free. Let them read that, because it will definitely help, because a lot of it's about, smile, eye contact, enthusiasm, right? Those are key ingredients. How to read, relax, and relate. All these different things that I learned then that are still foundational today, right? Those things haven't changed in 25 years, right? Like, you have to make eye contact with people. You got to smile. You got to read people's body language. All those things, those are, as old as dirt, but they still work, because sales is a relationship it's all about relationships, right? If you're in sales for the transaction, you're in the wrong industry, because I want to have something that's sustainable. I want people to refer me, I want people to promote, right? All of those things. So if you're looking at sales as just a, like, how do I get my next commission, then you're not going to be as successful.
It reminds me of something that Michael over here says all the time, like, what is business? Like, what is in essence business? And it's the two people. It's person to person. Like, at the end of the day, it's about the person you're dealing with, and it's not just the mere transaction, like you're saying. Michael, you care to elaborate on that at all? I know that's your thing you've mentioned several times, and I always love it.
I know I'm getting called on a lot in this. No, but it's so true. Like you said, the relationship rather than the transaction. Because it's, as Chris was saying, like, business is it's an interaction between human beings. And as much AI technology comes out and voice recognition and everything, you still can't, not yet anyway, still can't have an AI do a sales call. And you can't have that kind of interaction and that human interface that's so vital. Because if, like you're saying, if you're not smiling, if you're not making eye contact, if you're not enthusiastic, those are just red flags that are ingrained into, like, the human psyche. Like, those are very base kind of primordial influences on interaction, and that's so crucial to have, that you're willing and able to make a connection with, a stranger on a moment's notice is so important, because they're the person that you're trying to, to help. And I think it's so important too in sales. I think you touched on it a little bit too, to really not just be focused on, like, your commission, but helping the actual person. Like, if you're convinced that you are helping them, by selling them this product or service, etc., you're going to try a lot harder. You're going to be like, look, I'm literally trying to help you out. Like, I'm giving you this valuable product, etc. I think that's so powerful, to have that human to human interaction, that human to human empathy, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. I was going to say, it keeps coming back to that theme of empathy and, the person-to-person interaction relationship. And I think that's one reason why podcasts are so popular right now, is people recognize that, give and take relationship of, getting on, talking, and just getting real and having a conversation about what's going on, whether it's business, whether it's a comedy podcast, whatever it is, it's that relationship and, raw empathy that people are experiencing and really yearning for. But yeah, I mean, going off of that, I know I can speak for the other two guys too. We'd love to hear more about Laser and Trail, what you've been doing with that, and kind of the backstory there and where you're taking that.
Yeah, perfect. So my podcast journey, this is actually second attempt, right? So I would think it was May of last year. I went on Buzzsprout and I recorded like 2 solo episodes. But it's very interesting when I look back at doing that, is like, I wanted to do it, but I wasn't willing to invest the time and energy into it, right? And I think everybody's been in that position. So it went from like idea to action to just took a nosedive, right? So just to give you guys some context on kind of my LinkedIn journey, right? Because I think everybody, people that listen, if they're not on LinkedIn has now become a powerhouse when it comes to social media and content creation. So last year in April, I logged into LinkedIn after, it'd been probably a few months since I've been on there. And I don't know if you guys had this experience, but I logged in and I was like, whoa, like, what happened to LinkedIn? Like, it's not just about updating your resume and congratulating people on their jobs. Like, people are actually shooting videos. They're doing all these things. So I started consuming a lot of content. I started getting inspired by other people and the things that they were doing, and getting encouraged to start creating content on my own. So I just started showing up. I started creating videos. I, tried to be consistent. And then all of a sudden I started to notice that people were engaging with my content, right? I remember the first video was like 3 views, and like all of them were me probably, right? You're going back to look to see if anyone's like, who's watching this? Is anybody looking at this? But as the year started to progress, this amazing thing happened where, as I showed up, as I produced content, when people engage, if I engage back, the amazing conversations that were happening within that post. And so by the end of 2019, I was sitting in December and I crossed, I think I was at 7,000 connections followers, and I passed 20,000 in December. And I was like, holy crap, like from April to December, that's a pretty big increase. And then I, look back in April, I hit 4,000. I was like, whoa, hang on a second. Like I went from here to here, and now 20 to 40 literally within, 90 days or something like that. It was insane. And so as this growth was happening, I started saying, you know what, like as my audience is building, I want to figure out a way that I can add a lot of value back to the audience. Right. And so the whole show itself, the reason why I started it is, for one, I had a vision. I said, you know what, I'm a massive Trailblazers fan, so I want to figure out a way to incorporate my home team name into my show. But I also want to interview people that have blazed their own trail in business and in life, and share their real stories, not just how they got, not just the success, but like what fire did they have to crawl through, what dirt did they have to shovel to get to today. And so the show starts out with kind of where people are today. We take a rewind back to when they were a kid, and we bring it back to the beginning, right? But it gives people context, and it gives people real organic conversations. And so I don't actually research my guests. So now I'm fortunate where a lot of people reach out to me to be on the show. I remember being the person that had to do so much out. I'm like, who wants to be on? Like trying to get people. But as the show has been growing and I've been getting guests, and now I'm in season 2, it's just been such an amazing and rewarding journey. Like I've interviewed people that if you would have asked me a year ago, like, what would you think about having this person on your podcast? I'd be like, I don't know who they are. They would never come on. You know what I'm saying? Like all these amazing things, these amazing relationships start to happen, and then they start to refer other people to you. And it's just been this crazy journey. I think now there's listeners in 45 countries, and we just launched on January 1st. So it's been so cool. And again, the relationships that I've been building from the guests that have been come on, that I now have their cell phone numbers and we text back and forth with each other, to business partnerships, to being able to add value and offer free service, all of that just kind of culmination is what's been so rewarding about the journey.
That's awesome. Yeah, congrats on the success. You said you launched in January. That's incredible growth in just, I guess that's 4 months now. That's crazy. We're hoping for the same. I think now also just like, like I said before, perfect time to get into podcasting too, because everyone is just looking to have that person-to-person interaction, experiences, content that they can consume too. So
Yeah, and just by listening to everything you just said, I keep like seeing and hearing the same thing for us. It's like, yep, oh, that point, yep, been there, yep, going through that. Like it's so relatable. You hit on so many truths when it comes to, like what it takes, what it's like for podcasting, what we're currently going through, what we're looking to go through. Like it was just very relatable, and it was intriguing to listen to. I really appreciated that.
Yeah, Chris has been the one that's been doing a lot of reaching out to people, so I'm sure he's looking forward to the step where people start reaching out to us.
And they have. That's the thing. There's honestly a lot of people where it's like, hey, like I saw that episode with so and so, like, like, can I come on your podcast? And it's like it's this weird thing of like I'm now doing like interviews with like, okay, so like why do you want to come on our podcast? Like in this whole thing, and it's fascinating. It's pretty nice, to be honest, having people go to you. Yeah.
Well, I mean, podcasts are win-win, right? It's win-win marketing.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It's a win for the host. It's a win for the guest. And,
Yes.
you can cross market and promote each other. I mean, it's literally the best way to add value at scale to other people, in my opinion.
Yes, I totally agree.
Because listen, if you're a guest on my show, you better believe that stuff's going out several days on every social platform. You know what I'm saying? Like I want to bring business to my guests. If they have a book, I want to sell it. They've got a podcast, I want people to listen to it. If they've got a movie, I want people to watch it. Like I want them to grow from this. I want to partner with them because like I've invested time in them. They've invested time in me. And so that partnership is what it's all about. right? The networking aspect of it and the relationships that grow and stem from that. You think about like a year away, what those relationships would be like that are just now in their infancy. And it's just amazing all the opportunities that can come about.
Exactly. Exactly. I love how you touched on, the kind of the networking aspect, and then earlier talking about how LinkedIn has kind of become this boom town recently. How in the last 5 years or so, podcasts definitely weren't as as common. LinkedIn was definitely more like the right kind of thing, and now there's this incredible trend towards a really integrated kind of professional environment where everyone is, I think, a lot more open and like willing to share their expertise, share their story, share value. And then I think it's incredible to see, what's happened since the coronavirus. I think there's an even more profound and integrated community across industries, across professions, channels, and it's been amazing to get to kind of see that, on LinkedIn, on other podcasts, and then to experience that like this, like to be able to talk to amazing people like you and interact across spectrums that, in a non-digital age, who would be meeting, who would be talking to each other, it's just the inner circle. It's amazing to get to expand that circle so broadly now. And I think it's a real testament, again, like we were saying, to kind of human connections and empathy, that people are so willing to come on a podcast, to spend time just chatting, just conversing, sharing value across the board, people from all walks of life, all ages, all experiences. It's really incredible.
Completely agree with that.
And going off of that, the one liner we tell people as far as Canopy Cast, like, okay, so like what's Canopy Cast about? It's an ecosystem of expertise, right? So like what we want to do, our whole goal, our whole mission for this is to showcase people and who they are and what they do in the various fields and industries and their respective professions, and bring them, like, give the attention to them, showcase them. The show is about them. We're simply the host. We facilitate a conversation, but at the end of the day, this episode is about Jordan Mendoza, right? And like all the episodes are that way with our guests. Like it's guest centric, and that's not just a buzzword. Like that's the living reality of what Canopy Cast is and its purpose. And it's when you put people first, like anything can happen. And the beautiful part is that you don't put people first so that something can happen. They're not a means to the end. The person is the end. But as a result of that, oftentimes it's the free advertising, the marketing, helping each other out, networking, and all of that is a fruit from those seeds that you've planted. And it's been incredible to see how other people have benefited from that and learned from them, but also to see that with our own podcast. I mean, that's already happening for us, and it's honestly incredible.
Yeah, it's great to see the win-win mindset just take full effect. It's great. But yeah, kind of going off of that too, speaking from your experience, seeing, sales go from, door to door newspaper, which I'm sure is a little bit less acceptable in today's age. If someone shows up and knocks at your door, that's kind of out of the ordinary. People don't really do that anymore unless it's for political campaigning, right? But going from that to just 2 months ago, where it's mostly digital, and calling people, and even cold calling now has kind of gotten the boot, and emailing's the new cold calling, and it's all going digital. And now taking that and going to a remote perspective, what do you think the next step is for sales and just kind of business person to person interaction, and like having that transaction of information and services?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're gonna be seeing more digital conferences, digital summits. I was involved with one a couple weeks ago where it was supposed to be in person, right? But with COVID happened, and all of a sudden now I'm speaking at a digital conference versus in person. So I think we're gonna see a lot more of that. I think that we're gonna see a lot more schools shifting over to the digital model. We're gonna see a lot. I mean, like everything is just going to be pushed to that way because people are noticing, right? They're noticing things. They're noticing that how quickly people can adopt to this new landscape, right? Because like everybody was literally forced into it. So there were certain people that could do it, and they were teaching everybody else, right? Like our team of 7 was teaching the whole organization how to operate and navigate these waters. So I think also, you mentioned voice earlier. I think voice is going to come into effect, but I think that one company, one manufacturer out there is going to get really smart, and they're going to develop the Zoom app for TVs and put a camera in the dang TV. And then you're going to wake up in the morning and say, hey, Alexa, who's on my calendar? It's going to pop up your Zoom meetings. And you're going to say, perfect, get ready for my 9 o'clock. And then you're going to be standing and, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's, I think, what we're going to shift to. And it's funny because, like, we've seen that in movies for years and years and years. And finally, I'm still waiting for the fact, like, for the day that I can time on my watch. It's like, let's figure that out a long time ago. And so did, Inspector Gadget, but we can't figure this out, how to FaceTime on our watches yet. Right. Like, just imagine you're jogging, doing a Zoom call on your watch. Like, we're not too far from a time and a place where these things are going to start to come to fruition.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it's incredible to like you said, the options are limitless. From the hardware to the integrations to the channels. It's amazing to see. I think a lot of companies that just never thought about or talked about integrations and innovations in this kind of realm. The office. It's funny. Us, one of our companies, Chameleon, we were planning on opening up a significant office location in Denver, Colorado this summer, right before the virus hit. We were touring all these different locations. We were pretty locked in, and it's amazing to see. That's kind of it's a whole different world now, and it's amazing to see the effect of that in just the thought process. I think human beings are so adaptable. Like you were saying, like your mother is an unbelievable case of just the power of like human adaptability. Like, she's so strong in that. And I think that we're seeing a lot of people kind of getting back their adaptability, kind of their chops again in this situation that requires it. And I'm really excited to see, like you were saying, what happens in across spectrums, but especially sales for communication, because like we've been talking about, it's that human to human communication. So there's the aspect of maybe some people feel more distant in this digital environment, but there's so many ways to bring people closer together. And I guess a question I have for you, what do you think will be the effect of? And I think getting a little more in like the personal realm, I've had a lot of interactions with friends and family members, and in some ways, it's easier to communicate now. There's almost less busyness. You don't really have an excuse of you can always video chat in your home now. And in some ways, it's easier to kind of stay connected. There's a little more time. There's more opportunities. What do you think are like the effects in terms of just people, with their friends, their families, kind of connections that are being developed and kind of maintained?
Yeah, I think I'll talk about two different fronts. So for one, the connection with you and the people that you live with or that you're closest to, those relationships right now should be getting stronger, right? Because like you said, I'm not sitting in 2 hours of traffic in my 38-mile commute every day. So I'm saving close to 4 hours a day. So I thank you, right? Thanks. I just got 4 hours back, right? Because when you're in your car, there's a lot of lost productivity. And again, I do what most people try to do. I try to stay productive, whether it's listening to a podcast or an audiobook or making calls, right? Just trying to stay on the move while I'm not moving, right? Like trying to do that. But, it's bringing us closer together. Like, I've been playing Zoom Yahtzee with my family in Oregon. Like, that's been amazing. I don't know if you guys have tried that yet, but literally they have the Yahtzee game. I have it. We're rolling. I'm getting professional. I'm like hooking my phone up to one so they can see my dice, so they know I'm not cheating. But things like that. Like, I'm playing with people, and even people that aren't playing, I'm saying, listen, just join. We'd love to just see your face, and since we can't see you, and you know what I'm saying. And these are people 3,000 miles away. So yeah, I think you're right. Like, people are getting more close knit, and they're realizing how much that connection is so important, right? Especially people that are more extroverted, right? I'm an extrovert, so like I can't wait to go and see people, see actual humans, right? But even the introverts are now like, man, like it would be great to see a few people, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, everybody's seeing the effects of that lack of human connection, so people are literally being forced into the change. And again, we have to change, right? We have all changed since we've been on this interview. It's inevitable that humans are going to change, but the thing that we don't like, and one of you hit it on earlier, is no one likes being forced into it, right? None of us like to be forced into change, right? Because truthfully, change has to come from within. We have to want to change, right? So there's a choice that we have to make of whether or not we're going to use this time to our advantage, or whether we're just going to play the woe is me game and everyone's out to get me. So
Yeah, that's very true. And I think, coming from that, there's going to be this kind of um, spring back effect where when everything starts to go back to normal and people can go back into the office, those big corporate companies like we were talking about are going to try to rake everybody back in. They're going to say, okay, office mandatory again, and everyone's going to try to go back to business as usual. And then they're going to start to see this effect of, certain people dropping in productivity and, people not being as happy and maybe certain numbers going down instead of up. And then they're going to start going back to exploring remote work. But I think it's going to be this spring back effect of like everybody's going to quickly shift back to in office. And then I think there's going to be this huge spike of going back towards remote again. Like you're saying, do we need the 100,000 square feet of office space? Maybe we can go down to 20. But I don't think people are going to be willing to readily admit that right away. I think they're going to need to go back to normal, quote unquote, and then start exploring again, because of what you said, needing to kind of come to that realization on your own. It's very interesting.
yeah, and I think it's going to take longer than most of us are predicting, right? Because
Right.
like they're, to just make it blanket and say our office is open, you need to go back. Well, you're going to get a lot of pushback from that. You're going to get a lot of people that say, what, I haven't seen a decline in the numbers yet. Like if you look at the World Health Organization, the trajectory is going up. It's not going down yet. So like if it were me and they said, hey, you got to go back, I'm like, well, yeah, I don't know if I don't feel safe. Like, I don't know if I want to go, you know what I'm saying? And so there's going to be this like several month period is kind of what I'm predicting. There's going to be this several month period that's kind of like a mixed bag, right? You'll get some people that are comfortable, and then you're going to get people. I mean, like my office, we've got 100 people, and I've got some people that are near retirement. So like they're really thinking about, is it worth going? You know what I'm saying? So like it's going to be very interesting, like you said, seeing this thing play out. And also we're going to get a real sense of, what these organizations are all about, right? Because these are very, very tough and tricky waters to navigate, and everybody has their eyeballs on you, right? Not just your employees, but your investors, not just your investors, but anyone else that's some type of stakeholder is watching how you're reacting and responding. So I think it's going to be, and it's all like, we're all making predictions because none of us know, so.
Exactly.
Yeah, like I thought we'd be back to normal far before now, and it's just incredible to kind of see the week after week. No, it's gonna be another week. No, another 2 weeks. No, 3 more weeks from now, and it's crazy because I was just talking to someone back home in Virginia, and they're saying that some of the businesses have made plans to not even open back up until July, and I'm just sitting here like, do we really need that long? And then you look at the numbers, and yeah, we do in some cases. And it's just crazy to think about that. We're in the age where this is actually a reality. I never thought that I'd see a global pandemic. You watch TV shows and they're like, oh yeah, the Black Plague, and I specifically remember thinking about one NCIS episode. I don't know if any of you guys have seen it, where they happen to get the Black Plague somehow. It's been so long, I can't remember the exact specifics, but thinking about situations like that where it's so foreign that our society is at threat to a disease because we've come so far with medicine, and then having that slap in the face of reality, like, no, we weren't ready for this, and no, like, it can still happen to us. Like, we're not immune to this happening in society anymore. It's absolutely fascinating and earth shattering for me, at least, to even have that as a reality.
Yeah. I think going off that, though, I think something that's important for all of us to think about too is, when people are like, oh, like, what do you think about this? What do you think is going to happen? Rather than wasting all of my time and energy trying to figure out what's going to happen when I know that I can't do that anyway, I focus on the present. Like, that's like, we can't control what's going on, right? So it's, what can I do today? How can I improve myself today? How can our company thrive today? Rather than all of this stuff. Now, don't get me wrong, having contingency plans and all of that's important. But like, as far as living a life of fear, like, there's no point in that. Like, there's no point in like, oh my gosh, like, what's going to happen in the summer? It's like, you're not there yet. You don't know what's happening. Why are you stressing about that? Like, stressing about that's not going to help you, whether it's personally, whether it's with your family, whether it's business. Like, it's not going to help you. It's going to make it worse. How can I live it out to the fullest in the moment, in the present? And I think that's really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I think we're approaching time. Mike and Chris, do you guys have any other questions for Jordan before we wrap up?
Who's your favorite Blazers player? I'm just curious.
Lillard, Damian Lillard.
All right.
Yeah,
That's fair.
Right now, it was back when I was a kid. It was Clyde the Glide Drexler. He was another
All right.
underrated shooting guard.
I hear you. That's it.
Okay. And my last question that I can think of right now, Jordan, is talking about from your experiences as a child to as a teenager selling to where you are now. What do you think has been the most influential in terms of who you are now? You're this amazing person who's bringing all this information, all this training to so many people. What do you think was the most influential point or event in your life that gave you the strength that's gotten you through all of this, that has gotten you to the point where you are now?
So there has been three pivotal moments, literally three pivotal moments that have happened in my life that have made me look at adversity as an actual strength, right? Like the adversity that we face, it gives us strength, but it also increases our emotional intelligence because it creates this awareness. So in fourth grade, I remember this very vividly. Fourth grade picnic, last day of the year, Pier Park in St. John's, Oregon. I'm up to bat. I swing a baseball bat. It flies out of my hand, just like, if you played baseball, that happens to the best of us. I spun around. The bat lands under a tree. I walk over, grab the bat, stand up, and there's a beehive on my head. And literally, I'm running. People are chasing me. It's craziness. I get stung by 53 bees. So that if I was allergic, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So that was like, you want to talk about painful. It was painful, but there was so much adrenaline that I didn't really feel a whole lot of pain. It was just like, get these bees off of me, let's get these off. So that's like the first adversity that I had faced as a kid, so fast forward to seventh grade, we had moved from one part of town to another part. I had to take 2 public buses to get to my old middle school because I wanted to finish up seventh grade there. I didn't, I had friends. I didn't want to move. So I take one bus. It drops me off at a 7-Eleven. I hang out there. Like literally my routine every day is walk in, say hi to Lady Rosa, and then get right on Mortal Kombat 2. That was my morning. That was my commute. And so I'm sitting there playing Mortal Kombat 2 on one morning. And I forgot, I think I was Raiden. I don't remember who I was, but I'm playing the game. All of a sudden I hear somebody behind me. They say, "Hey, Daniel." And I'm of course not Daniel, so I don't respond. Within maybe a minute, my body gets lifted. I get thrown into the Terminator 2 pinball machine. My ribs get jabbed into that, and I'm being assaulted, punched by a police officer who handcuffs me and throws me in the back of a cop car. And he said, "You're under arrest. We know that you're a runaway." And I was like, "Listen, for one, I'm not Daniel. 2, I'm not a runaway. 3, look in my London Fog jacket and you'll see that my homework's in here." Look at, and he found my homework, and it was a false arrest. They thought I was a Hispanic runaway. I'm not actually even Hispanic. My dad's from the Philippines, but I literally got profiled as a runaway, and I got beaten by police. We had to go through court and all kinds of different things. That was number 2 pivotal moment of adversity. The third one, when I was 19, I'd worked for a sales organization. We were moving from the Bay Area, California, opening an office in New Jersey, and we had made it to Wyoming. Well, in Wyoming, we had a caravan of 4 cars. The driver, my friend Jeremy, he falls asleep at the wheel. When he wakes up, he hits the gas instead of the brake and overcorrects. So the truck is sliding and we roll several times. It lands. He gets ejected to the other side of the freeway. I didn't even realize I was injured, but I ended up having 52 staples between my two legs, 12-inch cut on the right, 8-inch cut on the left, laser surgery. They told me I wouldn't be able to walk or run or anything. And it took me about maybe 6 months for full recovery, right? So I look at these moments that I had gone through, and that's foundational for me, right? It's given me a lot of awareness. It's given me a lot of perspective. For one, like there's times when I shouldn't be here at all, like my mom wasn't supposed to have kids, and I go through these different moments. And what I've noticed is that adversity gives you a heightened sense of EQ, emotional intelligence, right? Because you become very self-aware, right? I've become really good at building, managing my emotions. Like, how do I manage these things going through those experiences? I've been good at building relationships, which is another bucket of EQ. And then last, I have very good social awareness, right? Because of these situations that I've gone through. So yeah, I think, the adversity that I've gone through, I actually look at it as strength and not weakness. And when I tell the stories and share that journey with people, it's with the hopes to inspire them that no matter what you're going through, there's always somebody out there that has had it worse. Because even though I've went through those three things in my life, they still pale in comparison to my mom, who lived 54 years with one lung, right? So I think perspective and using adversity as a strength versus a weakness is really what's helped me out.
That's incredible. Thanks so much for sharing, Jordan.
Yeah.
No problem.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your insight. I know I'm definitely inspired. I loved your perspective on everything, and I'm really excited to see where you head, especially with your podcast. So for everyone listening, check out Jordan, check out his podcast, Blazer on Trail. You can find it on Anchor and all the other links from there. We'll put all of your social media links in the show notes along with everything else. So everybody check out Jordan. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We
Yeah,
really
man.
enjoyed
Hey, I
your
appreciate the time, guys. Thank you so much for the platform and the opportunity. And I know you guys are going to crush it. If there's any way I can help support you all, just let me know.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Until next time.